I'm a couple of days late for this entry in regards to the American Horror Stories show that's on Hulu right now. I'm going to talk about episode 4, titled The Naughty List, and I believe the next episode is probably already aired. I haven't watched it yet, so this was the last one I watched, and I hadn't done an entry for it yet, so I'm going to do one now. The reason I haven't really gotten around to watching the most recent episode 5, being that there's only 2 more episodes left before the season ends, is because this one is really just... I mean, the story's not bad, it's just, it doesn't live up to what I want to say myself and probably a lot of American Horror Story fans are expecting from this show. It's not a bad story, it's just got, not the greatest kind of plot forwarding elements, I guess you could say. So it's about a couple of influencers who all live in a house together, and they do a bunch of stunts and whatnot to get recognition and to go viral. And it looks very much like almost a carbon copy of various YouTubers and like people who became popular on like Vine and Instagram and TikTok that we know today. They never say what the platform is that they're popular on. They just talk about how they have, millions of followers. And it just so happens to get at that point where they're at like the peak of their popularity. So they're trying to keep their audience. But they're losing traction because that's just sometimes what happens. If you don't stay on top of your content, you don't continuously have that fan base. And, you get older, things start to not make as much sense and whatnot when it comes to what you're doing or what you're bringing to the table as far as maintaining your viewership and your popularity. So they're at, like, the end of their rope. And it's funny because they consider themselves at the end of their rope and they're not even 30. It's a bunch of 20-something-year-olds. So it takes you on this journey of almost the end of their era where they're trying to do something to be a big deal again, or continue to be a big deal. And there's a string of events that they do, and it doesn't hit. They get a lot of backlash, and they're just like, what do we do now? What are we supposed to do? And it's not bad, the story they set up, but where it deters is, so it's called The Naughty List. So what's the Naughty List come from? Well, it just so happens to be around Christmas. They're in a mall, and they start, like, abusing, like, an elf for views. And the guy who's playing the mall Santa is just so happens to be this traveling serial killer who's, like... And the funniest thing is that the Santa is played by Danny Trejo, and I love that. I love the fact that Danny Trejo has finally gotten involved in American Horror Story, but his involvement is just kind of like... I wish I would have been something better than just murdering Santa. And of course, what happens is these guys are naughty, so he goes and he murders them. Again, I've said this in previous entries for this show. I don't see the connection with anything that this has to do with American Horror Story. And I think this is the pinnacle moment where all the viewership knows this wasn't supposed to be that. And I guess, maybe it was just rumors that were floating, or maybe it was just people wanted it to be that it was some sort of connection, because, again, refer to the first 2 episodes, Rubber Man, Rubber Woman. That's a direct connection to the universe already built in American Horror Story. This episode and the last episode have nothing to do with any storylines whatsoever. So, do they take place in their own continuity? Do they take place in the continuity of every other season so far? Because they established in Apocalypse that all the seasons are all one. They all are part of the same universe. And then they had 1984, which didn't really tread on that because it went back in the 80s and even as late as the 50s to tell that story. And it didn't even go near the timeline where Apocalypse takes place. So every season, the first 10 seasons, all connect, all make sense. The first 2 episodes of this show connect and make sense. Not only does this one not connect as much as the last one, but this one doesn't even live up to the level of expectations set by, say, the first one, or the first two, or even the last episode, the third one, Drive-In. Drive-In was very good. And if you want to say, okay, these are all going to be separate stories, then let them all be separate stories. But this one is just not a good separate story. And it seems almost like a filler. And I don't know if there was other things that they had in line that maybe why this was the one that got greenlit. I'm guessing it's because it meshes with today's climate. Understandable, but it just doesn't live up to what we're expecting out of the American Horror Story franchise. Like, we're talking about this the conglomerate of ideas and universes and all of these different aspects of the universe it creates for itself, where all these things exist. And this story, whether or not it's relevant, is more like B-movie quality. This is almost like direct-to-streaming quality in its story. And that's not what you're expecting from American Horror Story in itself. And I get it, this is meant to be a spin-off series, so maybe it is meant to be dumbed down a little bit. But again, I'm also coming off of the whole majority of us as the fans of the AHS universe that thought this was going to be directly connected. And if you wanted to say that the Naughty List was directly connected to something, shape, or form, not only is it vastly drawn away from the universe as much or even more so than Drive-In is, but it's not even good to be considered part of the universe. Like, I don't want to consider this story as part of the American Horror Story universe. It doesn't live up to everything else we've gotten. Every season, and everybody has their favorite season of American Horror Story. My personal favorite is Roanoke, because I have a guilty pleasure for found footage type movies and, like, filmography in that sense. So whether it's a horror movie or any other movie that uses that filmography, I always draw closer to that, so Roanoke is one of my favorite. A close second is Coven, because I think Coven is is definitely the season where it really got the idea of doing the story well with one linear thing happening. And I love Roanoke from start to finish. I love Coven from start to finish. Everybody has their favorite season or their favorite top 2 seasons or whatever. We could probably even say that most people will have favorite episodes out of this. If you're saying that American Horror Stories is all a separate universe, does that mean that this exists in a different timeline, but still has a connection? Because the first two are connected, and then these two, are these separate timelines? Is this going to lead to episode 6, which is premieres next week, I believe, and it's going to be somebody telling these stories? Like, I don't know where this is leading to. And if it's meant to be a precursor for Double Feature, which is the new season coming out soon, that they just released like the first teasers for it, I'm really looking forward to the next season. We didn't get a season at all last year, so I'm really itching for more American Horror Story, especially after, 1984. Some people can give or take it, but you want the next one. You want whatever the next story or the next universe is going to be. And I want to see where they go with it from Apocalypse, because they still haven't really answered that question. They still haven't answered, okay, they've kind of drawn back time, and what's going to happen next? Because all of those stories leading up to this point, what's going to happen after the fact? So if there's some sort of direct correlation between these shows and the new season, okay, maybe I'll give it a pass, but I don't know that now. So I have to go based off of what they're giving me, and what they're giving me is not meeting expectations. It's almost like they're just putting together whatever stories they think they can make work. And that's not good. You know what I mean? And maybe some people do like this episode. Maybe some people agree with me. I don't know. But I'm going to have to say, out of the 4 episodes we have so far, and I know the 5th one's out already, and I'm not in a rush to watch it, because this one was just not meeting what I was expecting, and it just was not good for me as a fan of this universe. So out of the 4, my favorite will probably have to be, the first episode, and my definite least favorite is this one. And I don't know what to expect from this next one. I can't even begin to say that I'm going to pronounce the name of that correctly. Baal, It probably has something to do with some sort of demon or deity, and hopefully that tells a good story, if not a better story. And if it turns out that this is just the worst one of the whole season, that's fine. You know, you have seasons that all have filler episodes and filler stories that they have to fill to make more episodes. But it just sucks that when you're only making 6, what are the other stories that they had behind wanting to do this show that this one got the green light? You know, like, as a fan, I expected a lot from this show, and now that it's up to the 4th episode, this last one just really doesn't have me thinking that anything promising is coming out of whatever they have left. I could be wrong. I gotta watch the most recent one, and I'm gonna watch the last one at some point when it comes out next week. Again, maybe you agree with me, maybe you don't. Maybe you're a fan of this. Maybe this episode is your favorite. I don't know. But as a diehard fan, this is very lackluster, and it just isn't living up to expectations for me.